So friends, let us look at section 163. What is section 163? That is you are treating a particular person as an agent of a non-resident. What kind of amendment is being brought? Let us have a look at it through the PowerPoint also. Right. See, first you should understand who is an agent. That is, under the income tax law, who is considered as an agent of a non-resident? That is, an employee of a non-resident or a person who has any business connection with the non-resident, or a person from or through whom a non-resident receives any income, a person who is a trustee of the non-resident, a person, whether resident or non-resident, who has acquired by way of a transfer of a capital asset in India. All these people are considered to be, what is it, agents of the non-residents. And agents of the non-residents have got an obligation of what? That is, they have to make the filing of the return in respect of that non-residents income in taxable in India is a point, and they have to pay the taxes if at all any required to be paid by the non-resident. Now this section provides for certain limitations on the liability of the agent. Section 149 provides what? Assessing officer can give a notice to the person whom he want to treat it as an agent of the non-resident. What is the time limit for issuing a notice to the non-resident agent of the non-resident? The time limit for giving such a notice was 2 years. Of course, these are the things which we have already discussed in our regular sessions on what is it, this non-resident taxation. It is not a new thing. So the time limit for giving such notice was 2 years from the end of the assessment year for which he wants to treat that person as an agent under section 163. So now this time limit got extended, that is to 4 years. So notice can be given for any assessment year prior to the assessment year 2012 and 13 also, and this particular period is extended to 4 years. In other words, assessing officer can give such a notice to any person to treat him as an agent of the non-resident in respect of the income assessable in case of a non-resident for assessment year 2008 and 9 after 1/7/2012, but before 31/3/2013 is a point. So as a student, the understanding of you should go to what? This amendment appears to have been made to recover the taxes from the Vodafone by treating the Vodafone as an agent of Hudson International. Then tax is now proposed to be levied in respect of such transaction as a result of retrospective amendments which are being discussed in section 2 clause 14, 247, 9 and 195 is a point. So please make note of what is the amendment brought in section 163. Write down section 163. Time limit for giving notice to any person to treat him as agent of the non-resident is now extended to 4 years, thereby now notice can be given till 31/3/2013, till 31/3/2013, to any person treating him as an agent, treating him as an agent in respect of a non-resident, in respect of a non-resident, in relation to income accessible, in relation to income accessible for the assessment year, for the assessment year 2008 and 2009. See, there is always a possibility of, in CA final examination, they may ask you a question on section 163, and they will first check your knowledge that do you know the fact that the time limit to issue the notice to any person treating him as an agent of a non-resident got extended from 2 to 4 years, and they will create a practical question with they will say the in respect of the income of a non-resident with respect to this particular assessment year, till what time the notice can be given. Then you have to see in the thing which I have explained, assessment year 2008 and 9, from then 4 years means what, 10th March, 11th March, 12th March, 13th March tak de sakte. So if it is income relating to the assessment year ending on 31st March 2010, then from then you have to take 4 years, like that you have to, and there is a possibility of such questions coming. I am pretty confident that on time limits wherever they are being extended, it is a very fertile area for the examiner to test your knowledge, because even after knowing what is the period from which date it is to be calculated is something which generally student will get confused in the examination environment. So with clarity kindly go to the exam. Then friends, section 119 of the Finance Act, this is a validation of demands. Already I have explained this validation concept. What is this? Now we are empowering, what is it, the income tax department to raise the demands in respect of cases similar to the Vodafone case, and collect the tax penalty and interest for violations, and at a later date, if whatever the amendments brought by the Finance Act of 2012, if the constitutional validity is going to be contested and courts accepting the SSC is a plea, even in such situation whatever the taxes that they have collected, they will not become refundable. So such a kind of beautiful power they have given by making amendment to section 119. This section provides for validation of demands raised under the Income Tax Act in certain cases in respect of income accruing or arising through or from transfer of a capital asset situated in India, in consequence of transfer of shares of a foreign company, or in consequence of an agreement or otherwise in a foreign country. So this section also states that notice is sent or taxes levied or demanded or assessed or imposed or collected or recovered during any period prior to 1/4/2012 shall deem it to have been validly made. That is what we mean by validation clause. So such a notice or levy of tax shall not be called in a question on the ground that tax was not chargeable. This cannot be challenged even on the ground that it is a tax on capital gains arising out of transactions which are taken place in foreign country. So this section will operate notwithstanding anything contained in any judgment or decree or order of any court, tribunal or any authority. It appears that this section is inserted in the Finance Act to ensure that the taxes collected in the Vodafone case or other similar cases are not required to be refunded. So a question may arise about the validity of such provisions for retention of the taxes collected from certain SCs by the government when any court judgment or decree directs that such tax should be refunded to the SSC. So another question will arise whether the government will be liable to pay the interest on such amount retained under validation provision if ultimately government has to refund the amount after some years of litigation. So these are few doubts which the people who are analyzing that particular section says, but what is the knowledge requirement for what is it CA final student who can expect some 4 marks question on this, asking you to write about what is this validation clause. Please make note. Section 119, that is where the success lies. See, understanding is one part and estimating possibly how the question can come in the exam on this. Now, section 119 of the Finance Act of 2012. Point number 1. Of course, on the top of it, validation clause. This section provides for validation of demands raised. This section provides for validation of demands raised under the Income Tax Act. Under the Income Tax Act, in certain cases, in respect of income accruing, or arising through or from a transfer of capital asset, situated in India, comma, in consequence of transfer of shares of a foreign company, or in consequence of an agreement or otherwise, in a foreign country. Next, any notice, next point, any notice or taxes levied, comma, demanded, comma, assessed, comma, imposed, comma, collected or recovered during any period prior to 1/4/2012, shall be deemed to have been validly made, Next point, such a notice or levy of tax shall not be called in question on the ground that tax was not chargeable. Next, last point. This section will operate notwithstanding anything contained in any judgment, comma, decree or order of a court, comma, tribunal or any authority Then friends, I move to the next section, which already you have studied, section 115A. What is this section 115A? As per section 115A of the Income Tax Act, 20% withholding tax (TDS) is prescribed while making payment of interest by government or Indian concern to a non-resident in order to augment long-term low-cost funds from abroad for infrastructure sector. It is proposed to provide tax incentives for funding certain infrastructure sectors from borrowings made abroad subjected to certain conditions. So this is a welcoming amendment. Because why it is welcome? Because through the amendment to this particular section, the rate of TDS, that is now that amounts are taxable at what percentile? At the percentile of 5%. That is, it is provided the rate at which the income tax shall be payable in case of non-resident other than foreign company in respect of the interest received from an Indian company engaged in specified infrastructure activities in respect of the loan given in foreign currency under an agreement approved by the government shall be taxable at what rate? At the rate of 5%. So this tax shall be subjected to the deduction at source under section 194 LC with effect from 1/7/2012. So section 115A says that in case if other than a foreign company, in case if it lends the money and the borrower makes use of that particular money for power sector, then interest income in the hands of the non-resident will be taxed at what rate? At the rate of 5%. Please make note of section 115A. Says what? The rate at which income tax shall be payable in case of a non-resident, shall be payable in the case of a non-resident, comma, other than foreign company, necessarily you have to underline that, comma, in respect of interest received from an Indian company, you have to underline that received from an Indian company, engaged in specified infrastructure activities, comma, in respect of loan given in foreign currency, under an agreement shall be taxable at the rate of 5%. You have section 115 BBA, friends. What is the amendment that is being brought? In case of non-resident entertainers, what we said, their income will be subjected to the tax at the rate of 20%. Earlier it used to be 10, that is now it is 20%. That is that recipient should be a non-citizen and a non-resident entertainer. So it is proposed to amend the section 115 BBA to provide that income arising to a non-citizen and non-resident entertainer Now, as per the memorandum explaining the finance bill, entertainer means theatre, radio, television artist and musician from performances in India shall be taxable at the rate of 20% of the gross receipts. But it is now proposed that is to increase the taxation rate in case of non-citizens and non-resident sportsmen and non-resident sports association from 10% to 20% of the gross receipts. So, consequential amendment is proposed in section 194E to provide for withholding of the tax at the rate of 20% from the income payable to non-resident, non-citizen entertainer, sportsperson and sports association. That means Government of India is giving due respects to the Indian entertainers. If you say to the foreign entertainers that you come and entertain us in India, your income will be subjected to the tax at the rate of 20% flat, then probably that may be a discouraging thing for them. They may stop coming so that we can have our own entertainers. So, please take it. Section 115 BBA, what is it? Income arising to a non-citizen, non-resident from non-resident entertainer, non-citizen, non-resident entertainer from performance in India, shall be taxable at the rate of 20%, shall be taxable at the rate of 20% of the gross receipts. Then friends, I move to the next section, tax on long-term capital gains. What is this, a tax on long-term capital gains? That is already we have discussed when we discussed in the rates of tax. I am not going to make you to write. What is it? If you are a non-resident, you are not taking the benefit of indexation, you are also not taking the benefit of a conversion of the sale consideration and a cost of acquisition into foreign currency and computation of capital gains in foreign currency. The benefit which is given under the proviso to section 48, if you don't take, then such a long-term capital gain arising on sale of shares which are not listed in the recognized stock exchange will be levied tax at what rate? At the rate of 10%. Since already you have made writing of the same in the first chapter, rates of tax, so I am not making you to write that. Now friends, having completed the non-resident taxation, we will go to the next chapter, that is a transfer pricing and what are the amendments which are being brought in the area of transfer pricing. Of course, most of the things are the one which you have already studied, but only thing is, since we are taking up the discussion on non-resident taxation and related provisions, what are the amendments brought which we have studied already, we will try to revise it. Wherever I feel like making you to write, you can write, but let us understand what it is. Simple. In case of transfer pricing, what I said, today we have extended this transfer pricing concept even to the domestic, specified domestic transactions. So, in order to cover those specified domestic transactions, here certain amendments, wherever transfer pricing word came, the amendments are being made. Look at, the legislature has tried to expand the existing concise definition of international transaction and also explains the term what is an intangible property in detail. However, specific inclusion of certain terms such as customer relationships, human capital related intangible assets within the ambit of intangible property may now give rise to new areas of litigation. Who says? Critics says. Now, in order to widen, and please do remember, unless the litigation is there, there is no need for a lawyer or a chartered accountant. So, on one hand we may say that this is going to bring a litigation. It is a happy news for the consultant and a bad news to the SSE. So in order to widen the scope of transfer pricing provisions and clarify certain issues, the following sections are amended. So some of these amendments have got a retrospective effect. So your section 92B, this section gives the meaning of international transaction. This section is now amended with retrospective effect from 1/4/2002. By this amendment, it is provided that expression international transaction shall include the purchase, sale, transfer or lease or use of a tangible property including building, transportation vehicle, machinery, equipment, tools, plant, furniture, commodity or any other article or thing. See, please don't too much get worried on how do I remember this, right? Because as a teacher, I can tell you that once upon a time I am also a student. When I am reading this kind of the provisions, only way by which I used to make my mind cool is, if it is difficult to me, it should also be difficult to all the people who are writing along with me in this hall. Isn't it or not? So when paper becomes a tough, please make a smile at it. It is not just tough to you, equally tough to all. Certain definitions we have to by heart means, if that is so difficult for us, it is also equally difficult for others. In that scenario, even if you write something on it, we are supposed to award the marks. So basically try to understand conceptually and try to reproduce it. The purchase, sale or transfer or lease or use of a tangible property including building, transportation, vehicle, machinery, equipment, tools, plant, furniture, commodity or any other article. So the point here is, we are looking at the definition of international transaction. International transaction, what do you mean by transaction? Transaction could be of, right from the childhood hum pade, purchase, sale, transfer, lease, use of any assets. These are all the assets can constitute a transaction. If it is done on an international basis, it becomes a international transaction. Then purchase, sale, transfer, lease or use. Certain things are common only if you really apply your brain. Tangible property, intangible property. First point में क्या बताया? Tangible property. दूसरे में क्या है? Intangible property. Including transfer of ownership or provision or use of rights regarding land, copyrights, patents, trademarks, licenses, franchisee, customer list, marketing channel, brand, commercial secret, know-how. It is only to make the students to understand whether you know the list of intangible things, right? And of course, if you have already cleared your first group, this is not a tougher task, because in one of the accounting standard you have got all this drama. Then capital financing, including any type of long-term or short-term borrowings, lending or guarantee or purchase or sale of marketable securities. I don't bore you by reading all that. Providing of services, including provision of market research, repairs and all that. A transaction of business restructuring and reorganization, amalgamations, demergers, slump sales and all that. Now, what is the amendment? Various types of intangible properties relating to the marketing, technology, artistic, data processing, engineering, customer control, human capital, location, goodwill and similar items which derive their value from intellectual content rather than physical attributes. So one point that you keep in your mind, that is enough. I am not going to make you to write. What is it? There is a small change in the definition of the, what is it, intangible property, and they have included into that particular definition certain items such as customer relationships and the human capital related intangible assets also is a point that you have to remember. And if you feel like, please make a small note that transfer pricing, section 92B is amended. to include in the definition of international transaction the term intangible property includes customer relationships, comma, human related intangible assets, human related intangible assets. I pray the God that they should not ask you the definition of international transaction. If they ask, don't too much bother yourself, write this so that the valuer feel happy that you know what is that is being included through the amendment. That's how you have to reduce your tension, right? Next, and the tension should not get a extension, right? Next, section 92C. What is section 92C? As per the Finance Act of 2011, central government was to notify the tolerance level. Yes. What is this tolerance level concept? What is this tolerance level concept means? The reference need to be made to the transfer pricing officer in case if the assessing officer feels that the transaction has not happened at arm length price. But in case if actual transactional value and what arm length price which the transfer pricing officer is saying, the difference is earlier they said it could be, what is it, plus or minus 5%. Now what they are doing is they are trying to bring down that particular tolerance levels to plus or minus 3%. And the government earlier said we will go into the realities, because when you talk about this tolerance level between plus or minus 5%, uniformly saying that for all types of industries this plus or minus 5% is not correct. Then they said we will come out with the tolerance level individually to the industry specific. So far they have not done. And now they are saying that it is not plus or minus 5%, it is to be plus or minus 3% only. In case if it exceeds that, definitely whatever the arm length price prescribed by the transfer pricing officer is to be treated as a deemed consideration. So that is about 92C. So you have to make note of only the amendment part. Write down section 92C deals with computation of arm length price, and second proviso to this section is now amended. To provide that if the variation between ALP, arm length price, determined under this section and the price at which it has actually been undertaken, does not exceed 3% of the latter, comma, as may be notified by the government. As may be notified by the government. Note, already concluded assessment proceedings, should not be opened or rectified, should not be opened or rectified. Next friends, 92 CA, it only says what? Now this 92C provisions applies even to the specified domestic transactions. So take that, that is section 92 CA. Section 92 CA reference by the assessing officer, reference by the assessing officer to the transfer pricing officer, to the transfer pricing officer in specified cases, involving transfer pricing, is now applicable to specified domestic transactions. So in respect of specified domestic transactions, in case if the specified domestic transaction value is exceeding 5 crores, then a reference can be made by the assessing officer to the transfer pricing officer to decide about what is the arm length price is a point. So these are the few amendments which are being brought in the transfer pricing area. In transfer pricing area, one amendment is with respect to the definition of international transaction. Second one is with respect to the tolerance level, that is earlier it used to be plus or minus 5%, now it is plus or minus 3%. And third is this reference to the transfer pricing officer can be given even with respect to the specific domestic transactions. This is what is being covered. Now in the next session to follow, which I will do it after the break, is advance pricing agreement and general anti-avoidance rule and amendments with respect to the wealth tax. Probably that session may extend for about 1 to 1.5 hours, with which I will complete the discussion on amendments.